And she opened by saying this: how is it that some kid comes into your class and you immediately notice their haircut and you say, "What up, haircut?" And that is exactly what I would say. But like, I have this keen sense, all of a sudden I'm like, "What up, haircut?" And they're like, "Oh my word, my mom didn't even notice." So I just happen to notice these things. And she said, "You say this kind of stuff almost every day. However, I obviously dyed my hair last night and I came into your classroom and you said nothing." Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Lead Volunteers and the Lead Ministry Podcast. Super grateful that you're here. Man, I'll tell you, I really appreciate meeting with you good people digitally through the podcast, whether it's audio or through podcast that you may be watching on YouTube. Did you know that, by the way? Did you know that we have a podcast? Every one of these podcasts, you can actually see myself and the guest, or myself and Bill. You can see our facial expressions. You can see notes that we have. So you can check that out at YouTube. But today, we're talking about an interesting topic. It's a little bit provocative. It's the idea of not showing favoritism. And I'm going to call this episode, "Don't Just Love the Pretty People." And so I'm excited about that. Bill, welcome back. We're excited for today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. And so this is called "Don't Just Love the Pretty People." And I want to open today with a story. Now, Bill, you know that I was a former high school chemistry teacher at good old Valley High School in West Des Moines, Iowa. Good old room 302. And here's what happened. I remember this story is seared and burned into my memory. It was third period, and in walked the darkest dyed hair girl who was naturally pale skinned and had, softer, lighter hair. And I'm telling you, the stark contrast between her skin tone and the insanity of her dark black hair was jarring. Like literally, I was embarrassed for her. And her new hair color was shocking. It simply looked not just unnatural, but absurdly unnatural. Now, I got to tell you, she wore oversized Junko jeans. If you have any historical recollection with Junko, she wore chains. She had studs that were attached. She had a couple of face piercings. And the chemistry class had ended. And I got to tell you, I was a high school chemistry teacher, and my chemistry classroom was like a youth group. I had deep connections with all of these kids. We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of games, but we also, the vehicle was chemistry. Great. Well, everybody had left the room except for her. And now I personally can't remember what lesson I was trying to teach that day in chemistry, but the lesson that I was getting ready to learn profoundly affected my life. Now, she took her place in front of me, and she stood incredulous, and she stood with a lot of confidence, and her eye contact with me commanded and demanded my attention. And she opened by saying this: how is it that some kid comes into your class and you immediately notice their haircut and you say, "What up, haircut?" And that is exactly what I would say. But like, I have this keen sense, all of a sudden I'm like, "What up, haircut?" And they're like, "Oh my word, my mom didn't even notice." So I just happen to notice these things. And she said, "You say this kind of stuff almost every day. However, I obviously dyed my hair last night and I came into your classroom and you said nothing, not even a single word. And I want to know why." Now, I got to tell you, Bill, my heart immediately was broken. I'm a pretty composed person. I can pretty much handle myself on my feet. I was totally rattled. Now, listen, I got to tell you, I had noticed her hair. In a sense, who couldn't? Right. And in that moment, I humbled myself and I confessed that I had noticed. However, her hair was like such a glaring change that I didn't have the heart to say anything. Stick with me. This is going someplace. And I said to her, "Hey, listen, I did notice the change, but I specifically chose not to mention anything. And the reason that I did is it was such a big change that I didn't want to point out and draw attention and everybody's attention to it." I thought in my mind that not bringing up her hair color change, as almost absurd as it looked, I thought that was the most compassionate move. Now watch this. Without blinking an eye, she said, I dyed my hair like this so that someone would say something or anything to me.
Wow.
Even if they made fun of me and said that I was stupid, at least somebody on this day would have acknowledged my presence. But no one has even spoken to me today. And she said
man.
Yes, she said this happens a lot. And to top it off, Mr. Denhart, who notices everything about everyone, said nothing. Now, I got to tell you, man, we don't have time today to get into the specific tragedies of her life and her personal story, which, by the way, I actively learned as a result of this incident. I actively dove into her world like big time. And I don't want to overshadow my point by diving deep into the 6 months of homelessness in West Des Moines, Iowa that her mom and her lived in their car, or her dad abandoning them, or the different micro things. But I have to tell you this, the point of the story is everybody has a story. And it's in the absence of those details that I choose to insert first compassion and then active interest. Does that make sense to you, Bill?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Yeah. And it just so clearly from that story, what that girl was longing for was to be noticed by somebody.
That's it.
Yeah.
Even to the point that she was going to do something that would likely socially ostracize her. She was basically like, I've come to my wit's end. Nobody knows me. Nobody talks to me. Let's do something so out of pocket that somebody tells me that I'm an idiot. At least they acknowledged my presence. And I'm telling you, man, my heart was broken.
Yeah, that's hard.
Okay, so hear me out. Though I have a degree in chemistry, I have a master's in effective instruction, and I went through national board certification in young adult and adolescent science. This girl with her dark dyed hair taught me a significant part to my personal education. Here's the deal. We're not just here for the pretty people.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good word already.
And here's what I want to say. Now, before we clicked record, Bill, you said unpack that a little more. What does that mean that we're not just here for the pretty people? Let's turn this quickly from a high school chemistry story to a ministry context, and then we'll come back a little bit to the story. In a ministry context, it is easy to love the pretty people. The people whose lives are kind of put together, the people who might make a little bit more money. They might be a giver. They might also be a contributor, and they just pull a lot of load for your ministry. And it's easy to see them and go running over to them and affirm them. And it's an easy thing to love the pretty people. And the kingdom of God is actually flipped on its head. It's not about how the world loves one another. What can you do? What have you done for me lately? How this quid pro quo, this I will love you, and I know in turn you're going to serve for me. Or I'm going to love you, and you're the super wealthy person who gives, and I need to make sure, well, here's the deal. I got my Bible here today, and it says here in the book of James, chapter 2, let's skip a page here. It says, my brothers, do not hold your faith in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ with an attitude of personal favoritism. I think we could stop right there, but he goes on. For if a man comes to your assembly with a gold ring and dressed in fine clothes, and there also comes in a poor man with dirty clothes, and you pay special attention to the one who is wearing the fine clothes and say, hey, you sit over here in a good place, and you say to the other poor man, you sit over there and sit down by yourself at my footstool. Have you not made distinctions among yourselves and become judges with evil motives? Listen, my beloved brethren, did not God choose the poor of this world to be rich in faith and to be heirs in the kingdom? But you've dishonored this poor man. So the passage goes on. I think we get where it's going. Don't show personal favoritism. Now, this is tough, Bill. This is tough for us as humans. Talk to me about your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this basically cuts across our natural tendency in what we do. If we are just operating out of default mode as human beings, our tendency is to want to go to the important people, or the ones we've deemed important, to the people who we know have a lot of money, or the people we know are easy to work with, or the people who, you know, we like. That's the easy path to go. And it's easy to avoid the other side of that. But even as you read that passage and as you were describing this, I really began to think about just how different Jesus is on this front.
Yes.
He is constantly going to the exact people who everyone is running from. The leper, the guy who is possessed by many demons, like just story after story, he is going after, healing, ministering to, calling disciples who no one else wanted as disciples. He is doing the exact opposite of our default. This
is so confronting to me in this very moment. Even though you may think, wow, he has this thing solved because of this dark-haired, pale-faced girl. Well, that was that was another drop in the bucket of an ever growing and ever reminding situation that I need. I need this as a reminder that Jesus did not come just for the pretty people. He did not come for the healthy, but for the hurting, the disheveled, the distraught. And you know, maybe it's kids, or maybe it's a kid in your youth group, and you're just like, hey, this subset of kids, they're popular, they're fun, they're cool, they're easy to talk to. And my best move is to cozy up to them and to get them to like me, to have really strong relationships, because this other kid over here, that really doesn't do anything for me and move the ministry forward. Ouch.
Oh,
that is anti-kingdom.
Right. Yeah. And I'm just thinking about how this plays out in a ministry context. So I have a story about this. I had a mom once whose kids she forced them to go to youth group, first of all, when I was the youth pastor. And they would come, and from my perspective, like, I thought they were doing fine. I didn't see anything going on, but they would come home and they would complain to their mother about how terrible the ministry was and how much they hated it. And so she was constantly sending me these emails about how disappointed she was and how we were doing this wrong and how it was all about fun and they weren't learning anything. And I didn't even know how to respond because it was so wrong about what the ministry actually was.
Yes.
And I actually prayed about this for a really long time. I would avoid this woman on Sunday mornings sometimes because I didn't want to have that conversation. And I prayed about it. And what I heard God telling me, not audibly, but what I felt the Spirit moving in me was, invite this woman into your ministry. And I was like, God, are you crazy? This woman does not belong anywhere near the ministry. And so I invited her in. She actually she jumped in and started helping with our snack shop during youth group. And she just was there and present, but she would come to the teaching. She would come to everything. And about 6 months in, she follows me back after youth group to my office. And she goes, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay, and I was like, great, here it comes.
You're bracing yourself. Oh, dude.
Here it comes. But I mean, honestly, because this was what I like to call an EGR, extra grace required woman.
Sure. Yeah.
I had avoided conversations. I had not been treating her well. I wasn't treating her poorly. I just was avoiding her. And she came into my office. She sat down and she goes, I need to apologize to you. She said, my kids are liars. They would come home from youth group and say how terrible your ministry was. And she goes, I have seen it firsthand. And she goes, from now on, I will be your biggest champion.
Wow.
She said, what you're doing right now with these kids is amazing. And she just went on and on. And I was like almost in tears from this. And I learned such an important lesson. That sometimes those people who are extra grace required, sometimes those people who are your biggest problem points and who you want to push away because They don't look so pretty when you encounter them.
Yes.
Sometimes those people are the people that you actually need to bring close, that you actually need to give extra attention to, and you need to figure out what's going on with them because everyone has a story.
Okay, brother, you literally just teed up exactly what I was going to say next. I have several working assumptions. And I got to tell you, this young lady in chemistry room 302, third period, with the dark hair and the Junko jeans, who confronted me, here's what I learned. I have several working assumptions. Number one, I assume there is a story. Number two, I assume there is hurt and regret with every person that I have interaction with. Number three, I assume there are things that are worthy of celebration in this person's life. And number four, I assume that there is power in me jumping out of my skin for joy, the joy of the human being right in front of me. Now, Larry Crabb, author, speaker, whatever, he has this thing where he said, what happens? And he goes into a lot of psychology and a lot of biology in terms of when another human sees another human explode with excitement as they see them across the hall and use their name in a kind of like jump out of their skin moment. The level of healing, the level of endorphins, the level of connection and community explodes when you jump out of your skin to call somebody's name, and you're literally like abounding with happiness to see somebody, and you let them know that. So I assume there's a story. Everybody, I just literally drove in from getting my trailer fixed, and the lady who was running my credit card, there is a story there.
Yeah.
I assume that there's hurt and regret. Why? Is it because she looks a particular way? No, she's a human being on planet Earth filled with hurt and regret. I assume that. Also, I assume that there's something great about her life and her story. And the next time if I see her in public or the next time I see her, it'd be a win for everybody involved for me to go, oh my word, what are you doing? Good to see you. How are things going? How's that kid of yours that you're raising as a single mom? Like, take an interest. So I'll say this, everybody has a story. It's to a person's glory to try to discover it.
Yeah. Amen. You know, one of the things I actually love about Lead Ministry and you, Josh, is that you always are providing really practical things for people in ministry. And so I just want to bring this to like a really practical piece of what you said, because it really keyed in how you receive people, and especially how you receive people who you naturally wouldn't tend towards. It actually matters in their lives and in your ministry. And so like, if you're going to apply this, you can apply this the next time you're in a ministry setting. The person who walks in, who you want to tend to avoid, who your heart says, I don't want to deal with that right now. You do the opposite of how you feel. You go to that person and you greet them and you tell them how glad you are that they are here, and you acknowledge who they are, recognizing all of those assumptions that we should actually have in place. That's that they have a story, that they're important, that you can really minister to them by just receiving them well.
I'm about ready to cry. When we do that, we are more like Jesus Christ than we're not. You are more like Jesus when you go running to the person that your natural tendency would be to be like, bro, can I duck down that hall? Right. But if you force yourself to love, you're being more like Jesus. That's huge, dude.
Amen. Yeah, just go and read the story of the woman at the well, right? Jesus, man, he shows up midday. This woman is at this well because she doesn't want to be around any other people because her sins are all on top of her.
That's right.
And Jews did not talk to Samaritans at all. Right. You didn't even talk to them. And men didn't talk to women in this scenario, especially when you were alone. You didn't just go up and talk to a woman. And Jesus breaks all custom, all tradition in order to show this woman that she is important and that he is representative of living water for her life.
And the kingdom. This is the kingdom. This is a different set of operating rules.
Yes, absolutely. And so he drew her in.
Yeah.
And the call is super simple here. We're supposed to be exactly like Jesus. We're not just supposed to, read our Bibles and learn more about him and fill our heads with knowledge. We're supposed to actually live out being like Jesus. And so in your ministry, live like you are Jesus to the people who you're encountering, especially those who are hard to love.
Yes. The hurting, the disheveled, the like, if we're supposed to be shepherds, this is the sheep where you're like, for the love of all that is good, you're stuck in a hole again. You know what I mean? You've ever seen, I don't know if like, cause you edit this podcast and all that, from a video standpoint, if you could somehow, Bill, go out and find that particular video where there's like this really narrow ditch, if you've seen it, and there's this one sheep and they work really hard and they pull it out of this ditch and then like they get it set up and it shakes itself and then it runs like 8 steps and jumps to go and it lands right in the hole again. It's like, that's what we're called to do. This is the calling. Yep.
And those sheep that have mange, they're all matted and they have fleas and they stink and all of those things. Those are often the sheep that God has placed you in ministry exactly for.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right.
We have to go after them.
We have to go after them. And I'll tell you what, I had a youth pastor who was working under me. And we had this huge event. It was pretty crazy, man. It was called the PVC night. We had like set up a golf course that was like we had PVC pipes, and it was like a mini golf course. And PVC was the boundaries. And then we had these obstacle courses that were all PVC. We had ring toss. Everything was PVC. It was a humongous undertaking. It was pretty fun. But at the end of it, there was this kid, and he smelled horrendously like 10-year-old cigarette smoke. You know what I mean? Like whatever. And he was a little bit on the challenging side, and he didn't fit the norm. And I watched this youth pastor blow open so much goodness and show so much love to him and include him in ways that he wasn't including maybe another kid. And I just watched that. And he came up to me afterward, the youth pastor, and his eyes filled with tears. And he said, "That kid is me. I was that kid. I didn't have running water in my very own home in, far out Western Colorado." He said, "I did every sport, every single season so that I could get a daily shower."
Wow.
This is real, right?
Yep.
And so he said, those are the kids that I'm drawn to. And it was really, really, really powerful. And I was convicted. Why? Because I thought that kid was an outlier. He seemed as if he was the one who was going to maybe ruin the evening somehow, some way. The evening was built for him. And what a mind shift that I still need to this day.
Mm-hmm.
We're not here for the pretty people. We are literally here for the disheveled and the broken. So here's what it says. If I can find it here, it says in the book of 1 Thessalonians, "We urge you, brothers, admonish the unruly, encourage the faint-hearted, help the weak, and be patient with all people."
Mm.
And it is such a different job. It is not like the job where all of a sudden this person who's rich walks in and everywhere they go, people are fawning over them. Bill, I got a story for you. There was a dude who went to our church and he was a bazillionaire, right? And he told me a story one time where every single year in sometime in the month of December, sometime he was going to go to this one jewelry store and he was going to buy his wife probably $20,000 to $30,000 of some new diamond thing. Right? This is a true story, by the way.
Yeah.
And he said, and it was so amazing to see the employees like all just come rushing around and want to take care of every one of his needs because they knew he was going to drop 20 grand and they might be the one who got that commission, Yes. And so this particular dude, everywhere he goes, people are kind of like, oh, hey, oh, can I? Okay. So in the church, what if somebody who never gets that kind of treatment at the church? What a blessing that would be.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah. And I mean, if you really think about it,
yeah,
we're all longing for that same thing, no matter what our position is.
We are all longing for somebody to freak out and be so excited to see us.
Mm-hmm.
That's Amen. What we're all longing for. And so, well, it sounds rather cliche, but if in fact you think that would feel good, then really the better thing, I read in a very reliable place, that do unto others as you would have done to you. And so, and Jesus also said these words, and Paul quotes Jesus by saying, it is better to give than to receive. Now that may sound like a high and lofty platitude, but it is, no. It is truly better. There is more gain. You actually get more. This is the upside down kingdom. You get more by giving than you do by. So if all of a sudden you would feel awesome if somebody like jumped out of their skin for you, that's this much. But if you do that for somebody else, you're actually winning your very own self at a significantly higher. It is better to give than to receive. Don't just love the pretty people. Love the person who likely isn't going to get love. You'll be receiving, but you're going to be such a kingdom player. You're going to be Jesus to that individual.
That's so good. And I think this is one of those things too, where it has to start with you.
Yeah.
But this is also something that you can train with the people that you oversee.
That's exactly right.
Build a team that has this. It has these glasses on, these lenses on.
It has this ethic. It has this ethos. It has this breathable air. That's the team that you lead. We are actually seeking the outsider. We're actually on the lookout for the struggling sheep. Now, that doesn't mean that I all of a sudden, you said before we clicked record, you said, you can go to the other extreme to where all of a sudden you're only dealing with the most disheveled and you're, figuratively flipping the bird to the rich people. Okay, right. Stop. No, we're not doing that.
Right.
But understanding, I think the kingdom principle here is those rich people and those pretty people, they're getting it everywhere they go.
Yeah, totally.
What if this was the place where that person got the love?
Right. Yeah. The heart of it is I used to work for a hotel. I was a bellman at a hotel.
Nice.
In downtown Chicago.
Okay.
And just like you said about the guy going to the jewelry store, there was a guy who would come in maybe once or twice a year, and kind of weird story, but he was a Mexican soap opera star. Okay.
You had me at Mexican soap opera. I'm in.
So like no one at the hotel knew this guy because no one watched Mexican soap operas at the hotel. Well, I mean, maybe some did, but we didn't. And so, but he comes in, and the first day that he's there, he gets out of I received him. He got out of his limo, and I'm supposed to be there to get his bags. And I said, welcome. It was the Fairmont. Welcome to the Fairmont, Chicago. We're so happy you're here. Right. He gets out of all I did was open his car door at this point. He gets out of his limo and he hands me $100 bill. I was blown away. Okay. Then I got his bag out, and I'm like wheeling his bag behind him as he's going to check in. And I'm standing next to him while he's checking in, and he turns to me and goes, "Thanks for getting my bag." He gives me another $100 bill. Bro. I get him up to the room, and I get him in the room, and I put his thing on the cart, and I tell him about Chicago and where he can go. He gives me another $100 bill. And he did, every person he interacted with while he was there, $100 bill. And so imagine the service that this guy got in our hotel. Everyone was tripping over themselves to serve this guy. Now, listen, I served him well, but isn't it also true that I should trip over myself to serve every single person the same way? And that's what we're talking about when it comes to being in ministry and to loving people that well.
Yeah.
Show your excellence to every person that's coming in the door. Treat everyone like they're going to give you that $100 bill, because you are more blessed to give than receive.
Yes, you are more blessed to give. And the other thing that's interesting is it says in the book of Hebrews, I believe it's chapter 13, you don't even know maybe that you're entertaining an angel, right?
Yeah.
Like, who do you know this person is? And by the way, it is not for earthly treasure that we are fawning over somebody. It's just the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the motivation for my job as a bellman was money. But the motivation in your ministry is to be like Jesus. The motivation is to represent the upside down kingdom well to everyone who comes in those doors.
Now, the interesting thing is that, yes, your motivation at your job was to be paid. But the interesting thing that I've learned over the years with all that I do, whether it's high school chemistry or a pastor at a local church or what I do right now, like, I have three things, and it forms a triangle. Here's the bottom, here's one side, here's the other side. And the bottom is make a difference. Make a difference. Do something great. Be a difference maker. Kingdom. Teach chemistry as if I'm doing it under the Lord, right? Care for people in the church or whatever. The other one is the next side of the triangle. That's the foundation, is do great things and help the world. The left side of the triangle is have fun. If you're having fun as you're helping people, that's going to draw a crowd. People are going to be interested in somebody who's helping the world in a fun way. And then generate revenue. Now, why do I want to generate revenue? Because I want to keep making a difference and I want to keep having fun. And at the end of the day, guess what? If you can't generate revenue, then you can't keep making a difference. You can't keep having fun. And you're actually going to be on somebody's needs list. And Paul the Apostle talks about this in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and 5, where he says, if you don't work, then you don't eat. Right. So you've now become a burden to the church because you're, off doing your thing and you're not paying attention. Forget it. My whole point is that I'm going to make the assumption about your ability as a bellhop. If you're literally just caring for people and you're having a fun time and you're super joyful doing it, the money, that's a non-issue. It's just going to come to you. Yeah, that is true. Yep, absolutely. That I don't even that if I just seriously seek to meet people's needs and I'm super joyful and I'm having fun myself, which is rubbing off on them, I don't even have to think about what I'm doing for money. It literally takes care of itself. And so here's the deal. As we close this podcast, don't just love the pretty people. Don't just love the pretty people. When I would say, like that young girl, there are people who are desperate for somebody to know them. They are they're willing to make a fool of themselves by dyeing their hair, as absurd as that is, and to stand out so that somebody would ridicule them because they're that starved for attention. She told me that no one even spoke to her. That's heartbreaking. And so guess what? What did I do? I got to know her. I got to know her story. I assumed that there was a story there. Little did I know, as I mentioned earlier, that she had been homeless for 6 months in West Des Moines, Iowa, and she had lived out of a car with her mom in transition. There was a story there. However, I also learned there were things to be greatly celebrated and jump out of my skin with excitement because she had ideas, she had dreams, and she was actually a really fun person, and we became good friends out of that incident. It did take a supreme dose, a 64-ounce, guzzler of humility. It really hurt to have her call me out that way. But guess what, ministry leader out there? I'm calling you out. I'm calling you out right now. This particular week, the kid that is driving you the most crazy, go overboard and love them. That's what we call you to do. Gang, this has been fun. We want you to really work hard to not just love the pretty people. Jesus didn't. He found the complex people. He found the people that were harder than normal. That's what we want you to do. Love everybody, and we will catch you guys on the next one.